Hello and welcome to the Comic Coach podcast with me, Stroud, indeed the Comic Coach. Hope you're well. Hope you had a really good week. And I wanted to do a solo episode this week because this is all about impact, right? This podcast is all about how do we impact our lives, other people's lives, and really what does that mean? So I wanted to share with you some of the things that have massively impacted me at the start of 2025. They're going to seem super simple, but oh my word, they are game changers, people. They are game changers. So the first thing that's massively impacted my life, and I'm actually going to show it to you because if you're watching on YouTube, or other places are of course available, you will absolutely see what I mean. The biggest change that has had the biggest impact on my life, and I'll explain how in a moment, is that I paid for this app on my phone called Minimize Phone. And I cannot begin to tell you what a revelation it is to have a phone looking like that. So if you're just listening, what it looks like is basically a blank screen with black and then some key apps that I use a lot. WhatsApp, BBC Sounds, BBC Sport. I won't bore you with all of them. And then if I then scroll to the right, there is a list of all the apps, right? There's a list of all of the apps there. So if I want to go onto the world of social media, which I've got to be honest, I was addicted to my phone. I'm going to be honest with you. So if I press Instagram, look what it does. Comes up with a little timer, a little box that says, how long do you want to spend on Instagram now? Which might as well be saying to somebody of my brain, how much of your life do you want to waste? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-social media. You know, you're probably watching this on some form of social media. But what I am anti is in between things. I had fallen into the habit, like catching a bus, getting on the train, just walking around my house. I've got to be honest, was bad, right? Of in those gaps, I would start looking at my phone. Now, I know all the evidence. I know that that's bad for me. I know that. Most importantly, I also know it's bad as an example to set my son. And this app, and what's great about it, is it's a one-off fee. Yeah, it's one of those apps you actually pay for, and they say the only data that they're going to use or ask from you is, after a period of time, is there anything they can do to improve it? Now, of course, in case you're sitting there going, but I want my apps to look funny, or I'd like my phone to still have the pictures on it. Of course, it still has that. So if I go into any one of my normal apps, so there we go, BBC Sounds or BBC thing, still got colour, still looks normal. Why does this matter? Why does this matter, everybody? Tech is a really big thing for all of us, right? For those of us that are parents, it's a thing that we probably think about more than we ever realise we're going to think about. It's probably one of our big generational challenges of how do we make sure that our young people and our children are using tech in a way so it enhances their life as opposed to being their life. And I read a thing recently and somebody was saying that actually the internet is real life. And you're right, it is now. It's not, we can't, this whole IRL, who made that word, that whole thing of IRL and then internet. The reality is our lives are so enmeshed with tech now. Imagine the idea of getting somewhere without using Google Maps, or imagine the idea of not utilising Uber or things like that. Our lives are enmeshed with tech, and in some ways it's a really good thing. However, for somebody like me, and it won't come as any surprise, lovely people, I am slightly ADHD, but it doesn't matter about my sort of how my brain works. What matters and why this app has had such an impact on me, it's given me my life back. I really mean it. It's given me my life back. It has enabled me to not get consumed with, dare I say it? Yeah, I do. Watching loads of other stuff that in 2 days' time, I won't even remember that I've watched it. There's no great thought to the majority of the stuff that the algorithms would pump at me. There's no great benefit to me of watching the stuff that the algorithms pump out to me. And by making my phone boring to me, it's enabled me to find the gaps. Now, a real tangible example of this was I recently just did a speaking gig over in Windsor, which from where I live is about an hour away. I got on the train and I had a couple of things to post on LinkedIn and something to post on Instagram, right? So it's fine. Did that, posted. But then, because of the timer And because I think I'm just becoming really conscious of it, my phone became boring and I got my book out and I read a book that's fundamentally challenging my way of thinking around creativity and art in the world that we live in right now. I wouldn't have done that without that app. I know myself now. I know myself, and myself would have been, I would have spent all of that time, honestly, faffing on my phone, looking at stuff. But instead, I read a book that actually changed how I was thinking. It challenged the way I was thinking. Now, you might be listening to this and going, Em, you had it bad with addiction for your phone. Hands up, I did. I think I'd just fallen into that. It had become so auto. It becomes so autopilot. It's that thing of, you're waiting for a bus. Oh, I look at my phone. We've lost the ability of just being because we're constantly connected to these phones. Those moments where we can have interactions with other people are lost when we are on our phone. If you're on your phone, people aren't going to come and talk to you. But if you're present in the space, I've already noticed just in the last couple of weeks of doing this, I've had more conversations with strangers in the last couple of weeks than I probably have done in the last 6 months. And you know me, if you're a regular listener and followed me for a while, I like chatting to people, right? So there's something beautiful about the reclamation of my own life away from social media. I think fundamentally, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about impact and how you are impacting the world, one of the things that is happening so much at the moment is this deluge of constant, information, noise, let's be bombarded. And one of the challenges is then how do we, as leaders, as thought leaders, as people, however you define yourself, but how do we really make sure that there's space for us to think? How do we make sure that actually what we're consuming isn't just some, I've got to spurn loads of content out all of the time because that's what the algorithms demand of us? How do we make sure that we're taking time to look up at the sky and see the sun? How are we making sure that we're taking those moments where perhaps somebody's sitting next to us at a bus stop who we might have the best conversation we didn't know we were going to have? And for me, the impact of challenging the manner in which I'm engaging with my phone has been genuinely life-changing. And I don't say that lightly. It's actually quite scary when I look at the stats of how much I was looking at my phone versus how much I'm looking at my phone now. It is extraordinary. And so one of the main things that's impacted my life has been this app. Now, just so you're clear, haven't been paid. This isn't an ad. I have no idea who developed this app, but I'll make sure it's in the show notes what it's called, and I'll make sure there's a link to it because it's probably the best £30 that I have spent in a really, really long time. And so if you are in a place where you are thinking, I would like to have more time, and let's face it, every audience I speak to, pretty much every client I work with is like, don't have any time for anything. But yet we have time for watching random stuff. Now, I'm not anti an occasional watch on YouTube. I'm not anti an occasional scroll. What I am anti is that that's our consistent go-to. And the thing about having yet another beat when the little thing comes up is like, actually, there's a moment where I go, well, I was just distracting myself, actually, because I'm going deep in thought about something, and actually it's a bit scary. So my default is I'll go and distract myself by looking at Insta or TikTok or whatever. And actually, it's like, just stay in this place, stay being present. So in 2025, at the age of 46, I may have finally found the way that I can really shift my relationship with my phone. And that is huge. And with the space that it's created, I've got really clear about where my second book is. I've got really, really clear about the direction of that, what it's going to be called, what are the titles. And honestly, I can't say that I would have done that in the last few weeks had it not been for me shifting my relationship, because I've got more headspace and more in the world. So yeah, so one of the things that I've done that's massively impacted my life so far in 2025 is this very simple app. Second thing that's massively, I don't know why I felt the need to do a song there, but I did. The second thing that's really impacted me and my life is that I have gone back to Zoe. And now, for those of you that are based in the UK, I don't think it's available worldwide yet. I started it a little while ago, and in essence, it's a very clever, very, very smartly packaged, marketed way of finding out what food works for you and what food doesn't work for you. Fundamentally, you can go to a nutritionist and you can get the same test that they do, but it's got swanky packaging. They've learned a lot from Apple. It's very clean branding. It was set up by Professor Tim Spector, I think is his name, and it all kind of came from studies, and he realized that he could probably help lots of people be healthier and be more proactive about their health, while obviously also being super successful as an entrepreneur, which I'm all for. Now, I actually did Zoe, I think maybe about a year ago, did the test. So, ate the cookies. Which one can I absorb? Is it sugar? Is it fat? Had the little thing on the diabetes thing that you can stick on, and then sent it all off, and then found out what food was good for me and what food wasn't good for me. And I did it, and I was pretty good at it and it's got an app, and the app is good, right? The app is really good. It gives you points. Again, this depends on how you like to be rewarded in your life, but it gives you points, and obviously it's sort of green, yellow, and red. And obviously everybody would be different because we're all made up differently. So I used it for quite a period of time. They make recipes up, and it's always shifting and changing. It's got proper money behind it. It's a really good thing. Yeah. And then, like a lot of us, these things that impact us, that make us feel better, in my infinite wisdom, I decided that it was far too expensive each month. And, that was something, I've mastered it. I now know the foods that are good for me, so I don't need to use it anymore. Possibly not the smartest move I've ever made in my life, because strangely enough, when I didn't have the discipline of putting it in, how many points have I got? Am I over 50? Because basically, if you want your days to be at 75, and then you know that you've absorbed all the stuff that's really good for you. And it's not a diet per se. It's just a way. And again, it's that thing. It's about taking that beat to go, okay, if I eat this donut, which I did on Saturday, and it was delicious. Just going to let you know, it was a properly good donut. And I was that part of my cycle where sugar felt like the best thing in the world, and it was great. But when I put it in, as I thought about, am I going to eat this? It then just gave me that beat going, yeah, I am. But then the rest of the day, I'm going to make sure that I eat all the almonds and the broccoli and all of the stuff that's really good for me, right? So they came back to me. Now, obviously, I think they've hit a point in scale that they can afford to do this. And they had massively reduced the monthly cost. And I was like, I cannot not justify spending this money on my health. And this is my point, really. It's not about Zoe. And again, this is not an ad. But this is the point, right? We all know the things that impact us, that make us feel better. And sometimes, I hope I'm not alone here, I hope it's also you. Sometimes we know the things that impact us and make us feel better, and then we stop doing them. Why do we do that, people? If you could send me answers on a postcard to that one, that would be great. But I think we do it, I don't know. I think it's almost as if it's sort of a self-sabotage thing in a way, sort of subconsciously. But also for me, I think there's a bit of me that's like, oh, I know that this works. And so I don't need the support anymore. I can just do it by myself. And it's like, no, you can't, Em. Eating and eating well is a really new thing for me. And I know loads of us have had challenges with food and body image and all of that stuff, which of course massively impacts how we come across in the world because of how we feel within ourselves. And I have struggled, right? I have struggled through my life around food, around texture, around taste, all because of how I was raised around food. And what Zoe is doing is it actually gives me a window into what's possible. And it gives me that space into what's possible. And so the second thing that's massively impacted me is Zoe. Now, Zoe might not be the right fit for you. You might not want to eat 2 cookies and spend a day, just sort of sitting there going, I wonder how my body is absorbing this horrible, revolting cookie that I just ate. But what I do urge you is just go, what am I making choices around in terms of food, in terms of lifestyle that really impacts me? And you know yourself, you don't need me to tell you. You know the stuff that works, right? And finally, the third thing, and like I said at the start of the podcast, none of this is revolutionary. But my word, it's important, right? The third thing that's massively impacted me is that I'm getting braver with boundaries. I am a people pleaser. I live my life in M-land. I'm really aware I live in M-land. M-land is a place that I've come to, and I know it's not where most people live. And Mland is predominantly a pretty good place. It's predominantly a pretty content place now. But I've had to work really hard to get to that place. And part of the challenge of living in Mland is that I can sometimes, at my cost, always assume the best of everybody. And I'm talking in every different context of my life. And actually, one of the things that I'm getting better at, still find it hard, still really challenging, not that easy to do, is getting better at boundaries. What does that mean? What does that mean to all of you fellow people pleasers if you're listening or watching this? It means, again, taking a beat and going, what do I need? What's okay for me? What's clear for me? And being brave enough to say that. And sometimes that involves putting the boundaries around time, the boundaries around my availability, the boundaries around communication. There's loads of different things that I've been exploring and putting into place in 2025. Do I particularly enjoy it? No. Do I find it easy? No. Do I wish I didn't have to do it? Absolutely. I so wish I did not have to do it. However, the difference that it's making to my life, because I'm honouring me, and I'm not honouring me at the cost of others. I'm honouring me, and actually I'm honouring others, because as I think it was Brené Brown, in fact I know it was, just couldn't remember her name right then, as Brené Brown said, clarity is kindness, unclarity is unkindness. That quote has stayed with me from that book of, I think it was called Braving the Wilderness, and I read it years ago. It's one of the very few quotes in my first book, Lessons from a Clown, that I used. And in essence, that's what boundaries are. They're clarity. And it's not something, for those of us that are born and bred Brits, I don't think it's something we're particularly good at. It's like we just smile at people and then just hope that they'll just go away. But we'll be awfully nice about it because we wouldn't possibly want to offend anybody. But I think boundaries across the world, I think, are something that people find challenging. How do you put boundaries in with family members? How do you put boundaries in with your partner? How do you put boundaries in with friends? Who are the people that are still right in your life, etc., etc.? So those are the three things. And I know, truthfully, the app is fairly easy because it's already done its work. And I feel the difference from it. And I don't think I'll ever go back to having, as my son said, he was like, it doesn't look like a phone now, Mum. I was like, I know. Zoe, I think, is becoming more habitual. So I'm learning more about food and I'm eating better and I'm feeling better. So it's becoming more of a thing, right? But the boundary one, that requires the most effort for sure. And I think when I think about boundaries, it's always about coming from that place where I allow myself that space to just check in and, as my therapist says, do what feels better. Do what feels better. So those are the three things that have massively impacted me on my life so far in 2025. Let me know how these have landed with you. Let me know what's impacted you, because I'm very curious and I like to know what stuff you've done that's impacted you. So those are the main three. This has been the Comic Coach Podcast with me, Stroud. Thank you ever so much for listening. If this has landed, do subscribe on my YouTube channel and do all of those good things and subscribe wherever you're listening to this. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to chatting with you next week. Take good care. Bye for now.